Hello everyone, welcome back to our another episode of Beyond the Ranks. Today I have a very special guest with me, Sancheeta Mam. So Sancheeta Mam हिमाचल से हैं और आज जो हमारा एजेंडा रहने वाला है पॉडकास्ट का वो ये रहने वाला है कि हम सभी अपनी लाइफ में किसी ना किसी स्टेज पर बहुत ज्यादा डिलेमा में रहते हैं, अनसर्टेनिटी में रहते हैं। ठीक है, तो उस प्रोसेस से कैसे बाहर आना है, क्योंकि अनसर्टेनिटी में कंफ्यूजन में रहना इज अ पार्ट ऑफ लाइफ। ऐसा कोई भी बंदा नहीं है जैसे लाइफ में कभी कंफ्यूजन क्रिएट ना हुआ हो उसकी लाइफ में, या फिर वो उस फेज में ना पहुंचा हो कि यार क्या मुझे ए ऑप्शन के साथ जाना चाहिए या मेरे को बी ऑप्शन के साथ जाना चाहिए। लेकिन हमें कैसे सही ऑप्शंस को आइडेंटिफाई करना है हम मैम के एक्सपीरियंस से सीखेंगे, प्लस हाउ टू आइडेंटिफाई आवर ट्रू कॉलिंग। क्या लाइफ में हमारा एक्चुअल पर्पस क्या है, क्या हम एक स्टार्टअप में काम करने के लिए बने हैं, क्या हम प्रॉपर जॉब करने के लिए बने हैं, 9 to 6 जॉब करने के लिए बने हैं, या फिर हम खुद खुद का कुछ करने के लिए बने हैं। तो हम मैम की जर्नी से वही आज सब समझने की कोशिश करेंगे। और मैं अपने व्यूअर्स को बताना चाहता हूँ, मैम ने ब्लिंकिट में, जो कि पहले ग्रोफर्स थी, नाउ इट इज ब्लिंकिट, मैम ने ब्लिंकिट में मोर देन 7 years काम किया हुआ है और अभी मैम बोल्ट.Earth में काम कर रहे हैं। तो वेलकम संचिता मैम ऑन बियॉन्ड द रिंग्स पॉडकास्ट।
Thank you so much, and stop calling me ma'am. Yeah, it feels like I'm so old, but yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. I feel very privileged and lucky to be here. Thank you.
या लाइकवाइज मैम, लाइकवाइज। सो वो ना मैं अपने व्यूअर्स को ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि मैम भी जेपी यूनिवर्सिटी से है, जो मैं भी जेपी से ही पास आउट हूँ। तो वो मैम रहेगा ना, वो मैम वाला रहेगा। ठीक है, वो नहीं जा सकता एक बार में। ठीक है, तो मैम आप हमारे व्यूअर्स को आप अपने थोड़ा सा बैकग्राउंड के बारे में बताइए, थोड़ा सा अपनी जर्नी के बारे में, कॉलेज डेज के बारे में। लाइक यू आर 2015 पास आउट, तो उस टाइम पर, लाइक आज से 10 साल पहले, 9 साल पहले कैसा रहता था? आपका ऑन कैंपस प्लेसमेंट हुआ था, ऑफ कैंपस था, उस टाइम पर आपका क्या थॉट प्रोसेस रहता था कि यार कंप्यूटर साइंस से कर ली तो मुझे कोडिंग में जाना है, या फिर उसके बारे में थोड़ा अपनी जर्नी के बारे में समझाइए।
Yeah, so I was born and brought up in Himachal, and I was very lucky to be there. So I did my schooling from a place near Dharamshala, which is called Palapur, and I did my college BTech in computer science from JP, as you said. And I think like college, like if you ask me, what is that one point of time that I would want to go back always would actually be college, because that's such a good balance. Like school में what happens is. Um, Parents की वो certain set of restrictions में नहीं बोलूंगी, but there are certain elements we're not so independent, right? Whereas
ट्रू।
like once you are in job, you're kind of independent, but there's so much worry around day to day that you have to manage things, right? College was an absolute carefree environment. Okay, so I think, and I was a very carefree person. I, as much as I love to get involved in a lot of stuff, I was part of literary club, I was part of tech IEEE club as well. And I would spend a lot of my time with the IEEE folks and doing a lot of stuff there. There was a lot of mentoring that would happen over the years. I also got mentored by really cool seniors. Uh, and I think that's how I spent a lot of my time there. Coming to the placement bit, I think somehow I decided in third year that I don't want to sit in placements, and
ओ।
I would want to. So it was a very interesting journey because I was doing three things at that time, and I was like, whatever comes first my way, I will go ahead and do. So I think
ओके।
ours was the first batch to actually organize a TEDx event, and
ओके।
like I think at that point of time, event management was a very interesting thing for me. So that was one. Number two, I was studying a lot of nanotechnology. My father and my brother both have been physicists, and there is some amount of
ओके।
physics in my blood. So I was also
ओके।
doing a lot of interesting stuff in material science and like nanotechnology as my electives. And I was like, if nothing works out, this is what I want to probably explore later. And at the same time, I was also doing like preparing for placements and stuff like that. But yeah, I had decided, and it's not something which was a bias. I really did not want to go into the likes of MNCs which were coming. I was very influenced by a lot of my seniors who were at that point of time living the startup journey. And I was like, okay, what's the worst that can happen? I will not sit in placements. I will try to do a bunch of things and probably try my best to get into a startup. And all these three things were happening at the same time. And
ओके।
fortunately, when everybody in from my like batch was in Delhi, Noida for getting placed, I was like, I just interviewed randomly with this company called Red Carpet Up. And
Okay.
like the interview went well, I got selected and I joined. And at that point of time I was also very lucky because JP does not allow off campus at that point of time. And I
Mhm.
think I was very lucky. I went to our HOD. He kind of approved that yes, you can
Mhm.
go, you can come back for giving exams and everything. You don't have to do winter semester or anything like that. And yeah, I think that's how I went to red carpet up.
Okay.
Actually, interestingly, I missed the interview of Grofers because it happened around the time of Diwali, and I think
Mhm.
somehow or the other I forgot to fill the link of uh, like the campus thing that had come. So yeah, it was
Okay.
a very interesting journey that way. I still remember my college days.
ओके, ग्रेट मैम, ग्रेट। सो मैम, मुझे यहाँ पर आपसे ये समझना है कि लाइक क्योंकि आपने ऑलमोस्ट अ डिकेड, हम कह सकते हैं 8 साल आपने ग्रोफर्स में दिए, ब्लिंकिट में दिए। तो क्योंकि आपने एक स्टार्ट, आपने वो ट्रांजिशन फेज देखा है, क्योंकि आई बिलीव 2015 में इतना बड़ा नाम नहीं था वो,
Yeah.
ट्रांजिशन फेज में था। आपने स्क्रैच से देखा है एक स्टार्टअप को, 0 से 100 पे जाते हुए, 100 से 1000 पे जाते हुए, एंड देन बहुत बहुत बड़ा ग्रो होते हुए। तो मुझे यहाँ पर ये समझना है, एक स्टूडेंट के माइंडसेट से, जो अभी लेट से कंप्यूटर साइंस में भी ग्रेजुएशन कर रहा है, सेकंड ईयर में या थर्ड ईयर में, तो आपके लिए एक कॉलेज ग्रेजुएट के लिए क्या आप सजेशन देना चाहते हैं कि स्टार्टअप में काम करने के लिए, क्या क्या, स्टार्टअप में काम करने के लिए और एक स्टेब्लिश्ड फर्म या फिर लेट्स से एक एमएनसी में काम करने में क्या क्या डिफरेंसेस आपने फिगर आउट किए या फील किए?
Yeah. So when I was like, I think there are few things which are universal. जो
हम्म।
2015 में भी valid थी, वो आज भी valid है. But there are few things that have changed over the course of 8 years, जो कि तब बहुत शायद थोड़ी unknown थी, and
हम्म।
आज थोड़ी known है, right? So
ओके।
I'll probably try to take thoughts from these two perspectives. So
हम्म।
first is कि 2015 में और आज में दोनों टाइम्स में एक बात जो यूनिवर्सल ट्रुथ है वो ये कि स्टार्टअप्स में आप जाते हो बिकॉज देयर इज रिस्क. एंड आई
हम्म।
थिंक एज मच एज इट वाज एन अवेयरनेस इन 2015 की स्टार्टअप्स में रिस्क होता है, एंड शायद आपको बहुत ज्यादा अच्छी पे भी नहीं मिलेगी, लाइक मे भी अच्छी पे मिल जाए अगर स्टार्टअप अच्छा काम कर जाए, बट रिस्क है वहां पे. बट हाई
हम्म।
रिस्क इज इक्वल टू ऑल्सो समटाइम्स हाई रिवॉर्ड बिकॉज आपकी लर्निंग एंड ग्रोथ बहुत फास्ट हो रहा है, राइट? So that was the
हम्म।
mindset with which I entered in 2015. Over the
ओके।
years, somewhere closer to 2018-19, startups
हम्म।
also started paying really, really well. उससे पहले ये जो पे के हिसाब से आप देखते थे तो they were paying good, but I would not say
हम्म।
that they were paying the best of the world. So today, if you
ओके।
really look at the salary structure from a very computer science graduate perspective, your salaries probably in certain startups will be much much better as compared to MNCs. Whereas MNCs will have a upper and a lower limit, but in
हम्म।
startups, people would want to get the best of the best, and they would probably put a much more higher benchmark of salary there, right? But
हम्म।
that also
ट्रू।
comes with a lot of risk because if you are sitting in the spectrum, which is like higher salary, higher growth, it means
हम्म।
if something goes wrong tomorrow, something really bad can also happen to you, right? And I
हम्म।
think this is one thing that we need to build as our mindset. Ki
हम्म।
high risk, high reward, but high risk still remains. I think this
ट्रू।
is one thing that I've seen a lot of people who have graduated in like since 2017-18 have not understood. And only after like 2020, when a lot of rounds of layoffs started happening, did people really
हम्म।
start to see that risk factor of startups. So
हम्म।
whenever you're entering into a startup, keep in mind that there's always a risk involved. So
हम्म।
hedge your risks. And the risks are not only related to monetary factors, they're also
हम्म।
related to यार आपके पास कल को job नहीं होगी. So how do you ensure that you have the right skills, that you are
ओके।
valuable in the market, right? Of course, finances are very, very important because agar like always have 6 months worth of salary that you can
हम्म।
actually live by, right? I think there was a second part to your question, which was around here. How do you know like you're a fit for a startup or fit for a MNC? I
या।
think, uh, and it's a very good and interesting question. As much as like clarity, whenever the people use the word clarity, it's more
हम्म।
about thought clarity. But usually, thought से clarity नहीं आती, clarity action से आती है, right?
ट्रू।
So if you really want to know if you are a fit for like MNC or a startup, try to think and figure out what are those small experiments that you would want to do, right?
Mhm.
Which will give you that clarity. So, for example, if I were a student in second year today, I would
Mhm.
actually go and do experiments. I would try to build certain things and see where I can go and get those kind of opportunities, right?
Okay.
Secondly, I would want to see what technologies excite me. There are certain
Mhm.
technologies which you will not find startups working on at all, right? For example, if you really were excited about the like threats and solving for certain kinds of AI problems, you will only
Mhm.
see them in big tech because they are the only ones who can afford it. So if you're thinking that okay, I want to be in AI space in a particular way, but of course, because there are different kinds of things that are happening in the AI space, but if you really want to do some sort of research kind of a work, right?
Mhm.
Then you can't imagine that happening in a very small scale startup which does not have that kind of capital as well, right? So there
Okay.
are, so you have to see what is your interest area, what are those small experiments that you can do that will give you more confidence. So for example, if I want to build my own startup and I'm
Mhm.
not able to like build something on the weekend for like continuously for 6 months, right?
Mhm.
That's a very good like that's a very good idea that you will get that okay, no, maybe right now I'm not ready, because
Mhm.
if I can't do something continuously for a given amount of time, either I don't have that thought clarity or
Mhm.
maybe that idea is not there yet,
Okay.
right? So I think a lot of these things help you gain that kind of clarity where you do a bunch of experiments, where you try to understand a lot of things. I think one thing that I think forgot to mention, uh, if you're trying to build a startup, right,
Mhm.
and you are kind of not sure what is uh the like what are your responsibilities in your personal life, right? It's a
Mhm.
very important thing to understand. So if today you have a parent to take care of, right, that
Mhm.
means you have to ensure that there is certain amount of finances coming your home every month. But when you're running your own startup, it's a very hard
Mhm.
thing to ensure that, especially when there is also a bunch of employees that you are employing, right? I'm not saying that that is impossible to do, but I'm saying that understanding what are the pros and cons of each situation is very important. And you don't have to
Okay.
think that we will like this is a forever kind of thing. You always have to understand that there will be a time when today you might be working in corporate, but
Mhm.
and you have saved enough and tomorrow you can do that. So your work life journey is a very long journey. People
True.
spend almost like 30 to 40 years working. So if you
Mhm.
start thinking about your journey as 30 to 40-year journey, corporate versus this versus that is a very small thing. So follow your intuition, look at what your responsibilities are, understand the
Mhm.
risks, and then take the jump. And I think that whoever wants to do something will find a way. So for example, you are building BTR, right? It
Mhm.
is it is your own startup in a way, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And you are trying to do it with a full-time job as well. So it's not like
Mhm.
either or. You can do small experiments that can help you understand these things.
ट्रू ट्रू इनकम्प्लीट एग्रीमेंट मैम। सो मैम यहाँ पर ना मुझे ये समझना था आपकी जर्नी से, लाइक क्योंकि ग्रो फर्स्ट में आपने 8 साल काम किया, ठीक है, हम उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा टेक्निकल निटिग्रिटीज़ में नहीं जाएंगे, लेकिन ऑन अ सरफेस लेवल आप हमारे व्यूअर्स को बता सकते हैं कि आपका क्या रोल था, ठीक है, ग्रो फर्स्ट में, और आपने क्या, क्योंकि किसी एक ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में 8 साल देना बहुत बड़ी बात है, 8 साल इज़ अ बिग नंबर इन अ कॉर्पोरेट वर्ल्ड। तो वहाँ पर क्या आपका रोल था, क्या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज थी, और क्या आपने स्किल सेट सीखे, नॉट जस्ट टेक्निकल स्किल्स बट वो जो लाइफ के फंडामेंटल स्किल्स थे जो आपने एक स्टार्टअप में रहते हुए सीखे, जो कि आप लाइफ लॉन्ग अपने साथ कैरी करोगे और लाइफ लॉन्ग आप अपने आने वाली अपने आने वाली जॉब्स में भी उसे इम्प्लीमेंट करेंगे।
या सो मेरा रोल लार्जली हमेशा इंजीनियरिंग वाली साइड पे था. देयर वाज अ वेरी शॉर्ट स्टिंट ऑफ लाइक 2 to 3 years वेयर आई एक्चुअली built an innovation team as well, and there
Mhm.
the role that I played was user research plus like engineering plus product. So it was anything and everything. Anything that I needed to do to get things done was the major role. But apart from
Mhm.
that, every other stint that I had at Blinkit was majorly an engineering role. Over time, I also grew to a leadership role.
Okay.
I think when you asked me, ki, yaar, what is that one thing that you've learned from there, right? I think my I was surrounded by great leaders. And I think if there is a learning that I can take from my that journey, it would actually be how can you try different leadership styles in different moments of time. How people are so hell-bent on sometimes talking about only one kind of leadership style. I think I saw
Mm-hmm.
many very different kinds of leaders and learned that they are great not because they'll have learned a particular kind of leadership style, but they're great
Mm-hmm.
because they have understood what people need when. So they empathized with us. Our leaders taught us that there are different kinds of leadership styles, and sometimes you need to really deep dive and be hands on, but other times you
Mm-hmm.
need to give people the freedom. So it's like a spectrum, it's not like one kind of leadership style. There's also a leadership style called as like servant leadership, which means that the leaders are in service of the people who are part of the organization or who they are leading, and not the other way around. Usually people are very bossy and they think they are the leader, but the whole idea of servant leadership is actually the opposite. It means that you're here to serve the people, make them successful. So what can you do
Mm-hmm.
in their service, right? So I think leadership is that one thing that I think I've taken away. Other than this, I think there were a lot of humane people around me. I think this
Mm-hmm.
is one thing that I learned from there, and I think I'll take away. There were a lot of leaders who taught me how to be a better human. Like Karthik, my ex-boss. I
Mm-hmm.
think he would say always say things like that, there's nobody who's come to this organization and wants to do bad. Everybody comes to an organization because they want to give their best in organizations. So
Mm-hmm.
if somebody is struggling, it means that they're going through something, or there is something that they don't know how to process yet. So how can we as leaders go and help them and enable them? Which is where I feel that all of these thinking processes make you probably a great leader in an organization, but they're also making you good humans in the end, right? So yeah, I
True.
think these are the two things that I think a lot of leaders helped me learn there. And a lot of leaders that I learned a lot of stuff from are not the leaders who are very popularly known. And that's also very
Mm-hmm.
interesting because these are people who love to just do their work and go back home, not make a lot of noise and hoo-ha about who they are. They're
Mm-hmm.
not the PR people. They're the people who will actually teach you stuff, and they
Mm-hmm.
will be there for you throughout your life. And it's not about just that one organization. So I think there were so many leaders like that. Karthik, Somin, Visa, Vedic, a lot of these
Mm-hmm.
people, Ankur, Jacob Singh, who was our ex-CTO. Like I
Oh,
know that these are the people who will be there for me throughout the life.
ओके, ग्रेट मैम, ग्रेट। लाइक मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि जैसे आपने लीडरशिप की बात करी, अगर आप अभी मेरी कुछ दिन पहले एक बहुत बड़े लीडरशिप कोच से बात हो रही थी, हिज नेम इज तेजा सर। तो उन्होंने ये बोला कि यार लाइफ में ना एक लीडर वही है कि वो आपको अगर आपकी बात किसी पब्लिक कॉन्फ्रेंस में हो रही है या फिर किसी पॉडकास्ट में कोई एम्प्लॉय आपका नाम ले रहा है ना पब्लिक प्लेटफॉर्म पर, तो यू आर एक्चुअली अ लीडर, आपने एक इम्पैक्ट क्रिएट किया है। तो वो
Yes.
आपको फिगर आउट करना है कि ऑफिस की गॉसिप पार्टी में, कॉर्पोरेट पार्टीज में आपका नाम आना चाहिए गॉसिप टेबल पर, या फिर एक पॉडकास्ट में या फिर एक कॉन्फ्रेंस में जहां पर आपने एक्चुअली में एक इम्पैक्ट बनाया है किसी एम्प्लॉय की या जूनियर की लाइफ में। तो
Yeah.
जितने भी सीनियर्स के लीडर्स के आपने नाम लिए, अगर वो हमारा पॉडकास्ट देख रहे होंगे तो दे विल रियली फील लकी एंड ब्लेस्ड टू कि यार कि जो उनके जूनियर्स हैं वो उनकी सीरियसली रिस्पेक्ट करते हैं।
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
सो
Absolutely.
मैम, मूविंग ऑन टू आवर नेक्स्ट एजेंडा, जो हमारा मेन क्रक्स है इस पॉडकास्ट का, वही कि टू आइडेंटिफाई द ट्रू कॉलिंग। ठीक है, और हमारा लाइफ में एक्चुअल पर्पस क्या है वो आइडेंटिफाई करने के लिए। तो जब मेरी आपसे बात भी हो रही थी पॉडकास्ट से रिलेटेड, फिर आपने वो बताया कि जब 8 7 8 साल आपने दे दिए ग्रोफर्स को, उसके बाद फिर कुछ थॉट प्रोसेस चेंज हुआ आपका, कुछ ट्रांजिशन आने लगा। तो हमारे व्यूअर्स को उसके बारे में बताइए, क्योंकि जब आप 8 साल दे देते हैं तो आप एक कंफर्ट जोन में पहुंच जाते हैं। उसके बाद से फिर स्विच करना, क्या क्या थॉट्स आते हैं एक एम्प्लॉय के मन में कि यार अब बहुत हो गए, अब मुझे स्विच करना चाहिए। तो करियर स्विचिंग के जो थॉट्स होते हैं, ठीक है, वो बहुत ज्यादा एम्पावरिंग भी होते हैं एट टाइम्स कि यार आज मैं जॉब छोड़ दूंगा, अब नहीं हो रहा मेरा, वो हो गया। तो इस चीज में मतलब आप जब, क्योंकि यार हम भी एम्प्लॉयज हैं, ठीक है, तो ये सिचुएशन हर एम्प्लॉय के दिमाग में आती है। तो
Yes.
उसमें आपने खुद को कैसे टैकल किया, खुद को कैसे संभाला, और क्या क्या पॉइंटर्स पे आपने वर्कआउट किया, और कैसे असलियत में कॉल ली हम इससे स्टार्ट करते हैं, फिर देन वी विल मूव टू कि यार आपने कैसे कैसे डिफरेंट रोल लिए, फिर आप बोल्ड अर्थ में कैसे है, फिर हम स्टेप बाय स्टेप उस जर्नी तक समझेंगे.
ठीक है. यार, सो आई थिंक व्हेन यू आर इन एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन फॉर 8 years, 8 साल एक जगह पे बिताना, एक्चुअली 7.5 years, एंड जहाँ पे मैंने
हम्म.
एक्चुअली में एक इंटर्न की तरह ही ज्वाइन किया था, राइट?
हम्म.
There were so many parts of Grofers and Blinkit that I've built, and they're still in use, right?
Oh.
That even though I am a big proponent of here, there is like family and work are two different things. As much as you should have friends and you should build that bond, it's not
हम्म.
a family. It's a workplace. There is a separate identity that I have at workplace, and there is a separate identity that I have in my personal life, right? Uh,
True.
there are also parts where it intermingles, and I don't hate
हम्म.
that. But there are also parts where it should be separate, is what I felt. Because
हम्म.
like everything in one place becomes a mess over time, right?
True.
But still, when you spend so much time in one place where you have built those best friend bonds, where you have built those mentorship bonds, where you have been a mentor to a lot of people and a leader to a lot of people, it
हम्म.
it becomes that, it actually becomes that family of sorts, right? And
हम्म.
get moving away from that was extremely hard for me, like very very hard. It was probably one of the toughest decisions that I ever had to make, and it was not
True.
at all easy. It took me like almost like, I kept thinking a lot of these things for a good amount of time, but then there was always that one thing that, okay, you know what, like some bit more, some bit more. But then
हम्म.
I don't know, for me, that clarity came in like a splash of second. It was just one morning I woke up and I was like, today I'm just going to resign no matter what.
ओ.
And I think I am a person like that. For me, the clarity, I'm usually the one who is usually building clarity over time, but
हाँ.
I think the decision happens in a moment. So nobody can predict when that will happen. Even I cannot predict when that will happen. But I think it was a lot of that preparation before that enabled me to think about it. A lot of companies were always like reaching out. Uber and Google reached out. Uber was like the recruiter at Uber was so nice and so such a friendly person. She was like, just interview with us. Like money no bar. Don't worry about the salary, don't worry about the position, you're going to get whatever you want, just interview with us once. But somehow over the years I had always thought that, like, I will not make the jump directly, because I've spent so much time here. I want to take a sabbatical and work probably more on the problems which are very closely aligned to me. So as much
Okay.
as I love being part of Grofers, and Grofers has given so much to me, it was in the e-commerce domain. And like one part of my journey, I was always feeling that, this is great, I'm getting to learn so much about the space, but is this the space that is really close to my heart? And
हम्म.
every now and then, whenever that question would come, I would pick something interesting in Blinkit and I would keep my journey on. So at one point of time,
Okay.
I was learning design thinking, like doing the experiments. Then Innovation Hub happened. So a lot of these things kept happening, and then the whole idea of like leaving Blinkit kind of kept getting shifted, right?
हम्म.
It was very much a short thing that once I leave Blinkit, I will take some time off, think, enjoy, and then like like as I will enjoy. I'm a big proponent of this idea that the more you enjoy things, the more you'll get to know yourself, what you really want to do. The
Okay.
first, so after I left Blinkit, I decided that no job. Did not appear for interviews at all, and then
मैम
and
इसी सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट यू, इसी टाइम फ्रेम में आपके पास गूगल और उबर से कॉल आया और आपने वो ऑफर्स नहीं लिए थे,
yes, yes,
राइट?
yes. So it was not an offer. It was, they were just asking me to interview, and I was like, "Nahi,
ओके.
nahi, like I do not even want to interview because I want to just enjoy this time. I just want to
ओके.
spend this time exploring stuff because I don't
गॉट
know
इट.
if, like, I also feel that when you jump into the next thing very soon, you don't know what other options are there. So
ओके.
like that's one thing that I really wanted to do and experiment on, and I think I could not do that while being at Blinkit. One can
हम्म.
really ask, why could you not do while you were at Blinkit? I think Blinkit was going through a very big transition in terms of like 10 minutes delivery ecosystem. So there was a lot of work that was happening. There was a lot of things that were happening there, and I also got married in 2022. So there was not
Okay.
ample amount of time between work life and personal life that I could take that much and like understand what is happening in other ecosystems. Also,
Okay.
sometimes I feel that you need to be away from certain things for a good amount of time for you to
Mhm.
really see and not be bound by those competitions. Because when you are in a workplace and you see your best friend getting into a certain place, into a certain role, you're also
Mhm.
gonna be motivated because you have seen that. But imagine taking a 3-month break and no competition. You are just like, figuring out stuff for yourself, right? So
Mhm.
I think that is what I wanted to live. I just want
Okay.
to know what is very interesting to me and not be in that worry of what is the my favorite senior doing, what is my best friend doing, because it's very easy to get into that trap when you are
Mhm.
making those transitions. It's very important that you take these transitions, like, at least for me personally. Not everybody can afford that. I understand that it's
Mhm.
a privilege that I could do that, but this is how I wanted to do it. And
Okay.
I just wanted to enjoy. So for the first 2 months in my sabbatical, I did not neither interviewed nor read anything about technology at all. All I was
Okay.
doing was pursuing my hobbies. I learned embroidery, did a bit of perfumery, visited a lot of museums, did a lot of nature walks. So
Okay.
I was all in the mindset that I want now inspiration to come to me, and was reading a lot of books around
Mhm.
health, like education. I was teaching part time at one of the places. I was
Mhm.
reading a lot of stuff in the mental health space, in the physical health space, and I was reading a lot about climate. So these three ideas were there, and I was like, these are the three ideas where I think I am very interested in. So let me
Okay.
just go and explore. So I started part time teaching at Air Tribe, as I said. Uh,
Okay.
Absolutely loved that experience. Started doing something at Plateau, like, which was also coaching of sorts. And these were all
Okay.
part-time things, right? Health, I realized that I need to first focus on my own health, then like do something there. So started doing a lot of things in personal life there. And the more and more I kept reading about climate, I
Mhm.
was very sure that, oh my God, all these things I knew, they were always in front of me, but
Hmm.
in some sense, I was also ignorant. So do you remember that feeling that you know something is there but you're not very serious about it, but the moment you start paying attention, you're like, oh my God, how ignorant I have been, right? I
True.
think that was the feeling, especially because I've seen a lot of things happen in Himachal over the course of years since my
Hmm.
childhood, right? So I was very aware of climate change and the impact, but I still
Mhm.
felt that it was probably like 20 years away. I would probably see all of the problems in like probably towards my 50s or my late 40s. But like the moment I started reading and giving like time to these things, I realized, oh my God, all these things have been happening for a good amount of time and I'm not paying attention to them. So I think that was what actually made me feel that, it's a good time to pursue things in climate, but then
Hmm.
climate was so vast. I think that was a very, very big problem, that anything and everything can be related to climate, from
Okay.
EVs of the world to biodiversity monitoring to climate modeling, which is an extremely AI centric problem, to
Mhm.
things in the simulation world, right? To agriculture, right? So
Mhm.
any sector you pick, there is component of like climate attached to it. And I think that journey was very interesting because it started with understanding the fundamentals of what is the greenhouse effect. I wrote a lot of blogs about it. And the more
Mhm.
and more I kept writing, I became very clear that, this is a direction that I would want to pursue. But still, do I want to be a science communicator? Do I want to be a technologist? Do I want to be a startup entrepreneur? All
Mhm.
these questions were still like wide open. Or do I want to work as I'm doing today with Bolt.Earth, right?
Okay.
So I think the next 6 to 7 months, like I think I started exploring this in the month of like late December, early Jan, and
Mhm.
then the next bunch of months I was able to like do a residency with Antler, where I was trying to build my own startup,
Mhm.
attend a lot of community events which were happening in the climate space, understand what the ecosystem is all about, uh, launch my own community, see what are the struggles there, read a lot of content, wrote some bit of blogs to help with Sci communication, talked
Mhm.
to a lot of co founders, founders, CTOs. And that's how I met Ishan as well, who was the
Okay.
CTO of Bolt.Earth, because I was
Okay.
I was trying to ask him, why are you not calling yourself as climate tech company, right? So did
Hmm.
a lot of these experiments. I'm a firm believer that you cannot know what you really want to do unless you can do small experiments. So like a lot of these things were experiments for me, and they helped me ultimately figure out my strengths, figure out how can I contribute in this space over time.
ओके। यहाँ पर मैम मेरे को जो सबसे अच्छी चीज़ लगी आपके इस ट्रांजिशन फेज में, पोस्ट ग्रोफर्स वाली जर्नी में, और जो मैं अपने व्यूअर्स को भी बताना चाहता हूँ कि एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन एक एक ऐसी चीज़ निकल के आ रही है मैम की जर्नी से, जो कि यंगस्टर्स हैं, कॉलेज ग्रेजुएट्स हैं, या फिर जो वर्किंग प्रोफेशनल्स हैं, वो अपने कंफर्ट जोन में आ जाते हैं और फिर वो एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन बंद कर देते हैं। ठीक है। तो
Yeah.
वो हम मैम की जर्नी से सीख सकते हैं कि यार ठीक है, रिस्क है, आ, और ठीक है, आप कई बार हमारी प्रायोरिटीज अलग होती हैं, हमारे पास हम रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटीज फैमिली की, पर्सनल लाइफ की, तो हम सोचते हैं कि यार वो रिस्क नहीं लेते हम। ठीक है। कि यार जॉब छोड़ने के बाद, जैसे मैंने सेबेटिकल लीव लिया, उसके बाद फिगर आउट किया, एक्सपेरिमेंट्स के, हर किसी की लाइफ में अलग अलग सिचुएशंस होती हैं, हर कोई नहीं कर सकता। लेकिन हाँ, अगर हम लाइफ में थोड़ा सा कैलकुलेटेड रिस्क लें और
Correct.
थोड़ा सा एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन पर भी ध्यान दें, तो हम अपनी ट्रू कॉलिंग को जरूर आइडेंटिफाई कर सकते हैं कि हम किस चीज में अच्छे हैं। और हम, जैसे मैम ने बताया कि यार ऐसा होता है कि हाँ यार, ये चीज तो मेरे सामने थी प्लेट पर, लेकिन हाउ इग्नोरेंट आई वाज। तो उस चीज को कर्व आउट करने के लिए हम थोड़े से और ज्यादा कॉशियस हो सकते हैं अपनी लाइफ में। तो
ये आपने
यस मैम।
बहुत सही बात बोली। इसमें मैं ना एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल ऐड करना चाहूंगी।
हम्म।
व्हेन आई वाज गोइंग थ्रू माय एंटलर जर्नी,
हम्म।
आई थॉट कि मैं स्टार्टअप बिल्ड करना चाहती हूँ। एंड आई आई वाज अंटिल दैट टाइम आई वाज लाइक आई नो टेक्नोलॉजी, बट इट्स ओके, इट्स फाइन, ये मेरी स्किल है, बट ठीक है। But once I went through that journey, I
हम्म।
realized how ignorant I was about my skills. I wanted to be a founder, and I wanted to do a bunch of things from an entrepreneurial point of view. But I was completely ignorant of the fact that there is a very big technology skill that I have in my arsenal that a lot of other people respect. So I've found a new respect for my technology skills when
हम्म।
I was part of Entler, because the more and more I talked to other people who were also founders, they
हम्म।
made me realize that this skill is also equally valuable. And I think that a lot of those conversations with absolute strangers who knew nothing about me but could
हम्म।
see that this is a very special skill made me
हम्म।
realize that I can also make that transition while leveraging this skill,
हम्म।
instead of going out and finding absolutely new stuff to do, where I'll have to learn so much more, right? And it will be a much more harder journey. I can ease my path of transition by picking up something which is kind of already my skill, and
हम्म।
figuring out what more can I learn in that, or is there any other interest area
हम्म।
in that adjacent space. And that's how I realized that, okay, I want, like, as much as I love technology and I love leading teams and I'm really good at it as well, I would
हम्म।
actually love to know something about IoT, because that's something I feel is going to be extremely impactful in the space of climate.
ओके।
And that's how all my, once I decided that I don't want to build my startup, I kind of like all my conversations with the people who were in the IoT space who were reaching out to me saying that,
हम्म।
"Okay, come join us." I was very, very particular and very excited, very curious. So I would spend a lot of my personal time to actually go and meet these people, understand
ओके।
from them what they're building, right? I
हम्म।
think like knowing your own skills, what you can bring to the table, and then one small
हम्म।
thing that I wanted to, like, learn myself, that
हम्म।
kind of brought a perfect recipe for what I really took up next. Yeah.
सो थैंक यू फॉर द डिटेल रिस्पॉन्स मैम। सो यहाँ पर ना मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है, क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोग हैं जो इसका जो आपकी अभी करंट जॉब प्रोफाइल है उसके बारे में अवेयर नहीं होंगे। तो क्योंकि लिंक्डइन पर हम लोग बहुत ब्रीफ में लिख देते हैं, तो पॉडकास्ट का पर्पस यही है कि हम अपने व्यूअर्स को बताएं कि हमारा रोल क्या रहता है। सो नीड नॉट टू गो इन टू द टेक्निकल निटिग्रिटीज या फिर कुछ कॉन्फिडेंशियल हम बात नहीं करेंगे, लेकिन एट अ सरफेस लेवल या ब्रॉडर पर्सपेक्टिव से आप अपने रोल के बारे में बता सकते हैं हमारे व्यूअर्स को, और जो आपकी करंट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है बोल्ड.अर्थ, ये क्लाइमेट या फिर सस्टेनेबिलिटी के स्पेस में क्या काम कर रही है और इसका क्या विजन भी है।
Yes. So Bolt.Earth is a charging infrastructure company. Now, let me explain what is charging infrastructure. How today, when you have a car, there are enough petrol pumps across the country that when you want to go for a trip, you don't plan. Yeah, I'll have
Mhm.
to, unless you're going to Leh, you don't have to plan for like figuring out कि यार मुझे पेट्रोल पंप कहीं मिलेगा कि नहीं मिलेगा, right? वैसे ही now that EV boom is happening, we are trying to build an infrastructure of charging points so that people
Mhm.
don't have to worry too much about is there like is there a charging station on the place on the on the place that I'm going to go, right?
Mhm.
I think charging infrastructure का मतलब क्या हुआ? It means that there are different types of charging points that we're installing. Some
Okay.
charging points can serve two-wheeler, three-wheeler. Some can like solve for four-wheelers, which need
Mhm.
more, like which have more battery capacity, which need more energy and stuff like that, right? Some of them will be like in your workplaces, some of them you will install at your homes as well. So if you have an EV, you need to have all these things. Sometimes you'll find it in restaurants that you're visiting, so that while you're eating out, you can somebody can actually charge the stuff as
Charge
well,
it.
especially on the highways, right?
Yeah.
So this is what my company does now.
Okay.
Like, what are the different kinds of verticals that are there? What is the vision? The vision is to be the largest network of India, so
Oh,
that like people do not have to think a lot about it, that infrastructure exists and we are the player who is ensuring that this happens, right? Now, who are the primary consumers, right? We generally sell it direct to consumers as well. So if you have an EV, you can buy a charger from our website. If
okay.
you are an RWA means society, associations, etc., which
Mhm.
are kind of mandated by government to also have some regions dedicated to EV charging.
Mhm.
They also buy things from us. There is enterprise clients. All Fortune 500 companies have sustainability goals. They all
Mhm.
need to have some dedicated area in their workspaces dedicated to EV charging. So
Okay.
I think so. They are one of our consumers, and then there are OEMs like Mahindras of the world, Bajaj of the world, which are like are like into this space,
Mhm.
and they probably sell EV, but they want a partner who can solve charging solutions for them, because charging in itself is a very big problem in itself, right?
Mhm.
So that's what like my company does. These are the four kinds of customers that are there. Now, what is my role? Um,
Okay.
so if you so I am the head of cloud at Bolt.Earth. What does head of cloud essentially means is I take care of backend infrastructure.
Mhm.
Infrastructure means servers and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and some bit of front end, which is internal dashboards and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Now, like if you now that you've heard that I work with backend and infrastructure, what do I really do on a day-to-day level? So first and foremost, I have to ensure that like our tech systems are ready to ensure that none of our these four kind of customers are facing any disruptions on their day-to-day operations.
Mhm.
So like there is an app, there is a dashboard, there is like these kind of interfaces which interact with the backend and infrastructure system. So there I have to ensure, along with my team of course, that there is enough amount of scaling options available, so that if there
Mhm.
is a good amount of load that comes to our systems, we are able to adjust accordingly, right?
Okay.
There is enough security, because like all of these are hardware assets, right? And software assets which are sometimes unsecure. So how do we ensure
Mhm.
that there is security ensured in all these places? Then there should be enough monitoring, so that if there is an issue that happens, we are able to debug, and we are able to see all the logs, and we are able to see all the kind of metrics that what happened at that point of time,
Mhm.
right? And then most importantly, how and where do we store all of this data so that it
Mhm.
is secure, safe, reliable, etc. Other than this, like this is majorly technical part of the things. Other than this, there are a lot of other responsibilities as well. So we have to ensure that whatever we are promising for delivery, that happens on time, or
Okay.
whatever in terms of, because infrastructure is one of the biggest cost functions. It
Mm.
takes a lot of money that you're spending every month. So how do we keep those costs in check? How do we I think a very interesting part of my time is to interact with other folks who are part of the mobile team, who are part of the like QA team or the IoT team, to understand, okay, how does the tech fit in all of these things and have that end-to-end visibility. And I think lastly and most importantly, while we understand tech, it's just one function of the entire organization, right? So it's very important to build relationships with people in the sales team, people in the product team, people in the CRM team who are very close to the customers to understand, are we building the right stuff? To get that feedback, okay, whatever we have built, what are the challenges that you're seeing? And then constantly iterate on top of that. So while I don't do every single thing every day, there is
Mm-hmm.
some version of one or the other which is happening from time to time, and we do set up goals on a quarterly basis where we focus more on certain elements of the things that I talked about more
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to the rest of the things. So for example, last few months I was super duper busy uh, in end-to-end coordination between our tech teams, and I was also super busy with respect to the financial like aspects of our infrastructure. I think the
Okay.
next few months, I'm very excited to work with my teams around infrastructure monitoring. There's certain set of elements that are very new to our industry, which is like
Mm-hmm.
WebSockets and stuff like that, which are very technical in nature. So
Mm-hmm.
we are figuring out how to monitor them. So there's a lot of exploration and technical research that's happening. Yeah,
Great.
and I think that's what my day to day looks like.
ग्रेट ग्रेट थैंक यू सो मच फॉर दिस डिटेल्ड रिस्पॉन्स मैम। मैम यहाँ पर ना मेरा एक मतलब ये थोड़ा सा आउट ऑफ स्कोप क्वेश्चन मैं आपसे पूछना चाहता हूँ बेस क्योंकि आप इस सेगमेंट में काम कर रहे हो, आपको टेक्निकल नॉलेज भी है। तो जैसा मतलब आजकल जैसे आपने पता होगा जो भावेश अग्रवाल ओला के फाउंडर है, ठीक है, वो बहुत ज़्यादा लिंक्डइन पर छाए हुए हैं, इंस्टा पे छाए हुए हैं, ठीक है। तो जितना मैं देखता हूँ और जो ईवीज के जो लोग आजकल ईवी कार भी ड्राइव कर रहे हैं, बी इट टाटा की हो या किसी और कंपनी की, तो अभी आपके अकॉर्डिंग क्योंकि इनमें ना बहुत ज्यादा प्रॉब्लम आ रही है कस्टमर्स को, ठीक है, चार्जिंग सॉकेट से रिलेटेड या फिर इनकी लाइफ से रिलेटेड, और अगर एकदम लेमैन में भी हम बात करें तो कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव भी नहीं है, ये महंगी भी पड़ती हैं। अगर हम पेट्रोल या डीजल से भी कंपेयर ब्रेकडाउन करके देखें तो महंगी पड़ती है। तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक कि क्योंकि आप अभी एक ईवी आप एक प्रोडक्ट बेस्ड कंपनी में काम कर रहे हो जिसका गोल भी वही है, ईवी की तरफ ओरिएंटेड है, तो व्हाट डू यू थिंक कि कितना टाइम और लगेगा इंडिया के लेवल पे, मैं कह रहा हूँ बाहर के लेवल पे मैं नहीं बोल रहा, इंडिया के लेवल पर कि पूरा इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बहुत ज्यादा स्मूथ बनाने के लिए, और जो अभी अभी और क्या नाम है जिस लेवल पर भी पेट्रोल वाली कार हमें पड़ती है या फिर कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव इसे कैसे बना कि कंपनी सोच रही है इसे कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव बनाने के लिए, और ये सारे चैलेंजेस जो आ रहे हैं अभी वो कैसे कर्ब आउट करेंगे फ्यूचर में।
ठीक है। So there are two parts to this question. One is cost effectiveness and another
हम्म,
is कि अभी हम कहाँ हैं जर्नी में, right?
हाँ कहाँ पर है।
So let's first start from the cost effectiveness,
हम्म।
right? यार लोग ईवी को आज प्रेफर करना चाहते हैं
हम्म।
मेजरली बिकॉज बहुत बड़ा कॉस्ट इफेक्टिवनेस लोगों को उसमें दिखता है, एंड आई विल गिव यू एन इंसाइट इनटू दैट.
हम्म।
Petrol and diesel is like 100 rupees per liter, right?
ओके। हम्म।
That is the main driver for people to go from like combustion engines to like your EVs, right? And I think that is the main driving factor here, which is why the industry is also trying to do everything. I think a majority of costs have actually come down,
ओके।
in my opinion. Large amount of work has already been done. I think what in terms of cost remains to be solved. I think government is trying a bit to solve that via subsidies,
हम्म।
but I think a lot of that is also marketplace. So if you really think about it, I think now I would want to get into where we are at, right? We are, so if I compare it to the Blinkit journey, because even in the Blinkit journey there was no market for hyper local commerce, and
हम्म।
we were one of those who were trying to create that. Even though Amazon and the likes were there, but they were not hyper local in nature, right?
हाँ।
uh, so we were doing all of that. We started in late 2014, and I think 2016 was when like first set of product had been out. We had certain set of learnings. We moved from hyper local to marketplace to then retail based businesses, right?
हम्म।
And I think it was very new for India back then, and it took 7.5 to 8 years of that journey of that company to actually make a dent and say ki yaar, now 10 minutes is what we think is going to stay. And I think
ओके।
these are all evolutions of a company. So every company is trying a particular goal, every industry is trying a particular goal, and then we over time kind of, it's not like a straight line. You're
हम्म।
trying to have ambitious goals, and then sometimes you reach there with some amount of zigzag, sometimes you probably reach there but then cost is not effective. So if you really look at things, 2000, I genuinely feel that EV industry is probably like in the early first 4 5 years. I think if I really look at it from a Bolt journey specifically, even though the company is actually 7 years already into from its inception, I still feel that the market is of hyperlocal that we saw was in the third year in 2016. We're at the same stage right now. So we're
Hmm.
probably in the very, very early days of like this market. And like if I have to really say that when it will be established, I think there are few. That's what makes climate very interesting. It's not a one single answer. It's a very layered answer of sorts. So a lot of
Hmm.
people come and tell me and say कि यार अरे like EVs का क्या फायदा, ऑफ कोर्स आप लोग इलेक्ट्रिसिटी तो वही यूज कर रहे हो जो कि ग्रिड से नॉन रिन्यूएबल सोर्सेस से आ रही है, राइट? बट देयर इज अ वेरी नुआंस टू इट. The electricity component in terms of generation and distribution can be controlled much more tightly by government as
Okay.
compared to the distribution and introduction in terms of your vehicles. So, if you
Hmm.
really see in private markets, it would take somewhere closer to 4 to 7 years or 10, like probably like 4 to 7 years kind of a timeline for
Hmm.
something like EVs to become mainstream.
Okay.
But when you look at electricity, government has a lot of control on it. Government can bring policies which can actually enable a lot of that at a much faster rate. So if you really look at the renewable energy distribution that India has kind of cracked over the last 2 3 years, the curves are exponential in nature,
Okay.
which is why that is the difference between government controlled stuff and private markets. Private markets need more time in general for certain things. Of course there are certain
Hmm.
things which will be probably slower in the government space, but
Okay.
like, I think our government has been pro sustainability, and I think a lot of actions have been taken largely, at least from a very cost effectiveness point of view there, right? So it is very important for people to understand that unless these vehicles are on road, energy being like coming from renewable can probably happen faster than these vehicles coming on road. So
Okay.
it's much more longer of a process, right? That's one thing. So it, like, I think we are probably still in the very early stages. It will
Hmm.
take some amount of time before I can see this. And I think because I've gone through that Blinkit journey, there's so many parallels that I can see.
Hmm.
For example, in the early days of Blinkit, there was a tie-up between. I don't think a lot of people would know this, but there was a tie-up between Blinkit and Reliance, where we
Oh.
would. Yes, there was a tie-up where we would take vegetables from their Shahakari Bhandar, and there was this. I think the Reliance also has like food stores. I'm not remembering the name of it, but it's like more kind of food stores that they used to have in malls and stuff. We
Hmm.
used to get stuff from there and like deliver it to the customers, right?
Okay.
So at that point of time, I think it was an open arrangement of sorts that anytime any party would feel that they would do not want to do this, they can say no, right? So
Okay.
in somebody who is a competitor today, right, for Blinkit was a collaborator back then, right?
Okay.
And I think I'm seeing very similar trends even in this space where today you don't know who your true competitor is. You can
True.
really see that, okay, like Ola and Ather can say they are competitors of each other, but there can be certain solutioning that can probably happen in either one of them that can actually change the market in itself.
Hmm.
uh, Maybe there's some patent that everybody has, that probably Ather has, that everybody else, if they need the technology, has to go to Ather, right?
Okay.
I think a lot of these kind of interesting patterns exist in the climate space that today you are not very well defined on who your competitor is. So in some sense, Ather can be our competitor because they also build charging solutions. Ola can be
Hmm.
a competitor because they also build charging solutions. But
Okay.
internally, we've also collaborated with them for the same, right?
Okay.
So, like, I think these are very interesting patterns that I've seen in the industry today. So,
Okay.
still very early days.
Okay.
हाँ.
So, ma'am, like moving on to our last agenda of the podcast. So, just I would like to know कि क्योंकि जैसे आपने बताया कि जो भी फॉर्च्यून 500 कंपनीज हैं, या फिर जो भी एफएमसीजी लाइन में भी बहुत सारी, या फिर जितने भी सेक्टर्स हैं, कंपनीज हैं, तो उनका एक वर्टिकल रहता है। जैसे सीएसआर का एक वर्टिकल रहता है, ऐसे ही एक वर्टिकल सस्टेनेबिलिटी के लिए भी रहता है। ठीक है, कि आपको सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ के लिए काम करना है, बी इट अपनी पैकेजिंग में, या फिर किसी भी एक एक किसी भी सेगमेंट में। तो मेरे को ये जानना था कि एक कॉलेज ग्रेजुएट के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से, कि क्या इस सेक्टर में ये सेक्टर इमर्ज होने वाला है, और क्या इसमें अलग अलग ग्रोथ अपॉर्चुनिटीज आने वाली हैं, और क्या कुछ ऐसा यंगस्टर्स को करना चाहिए, क्योंकि हर एक सेक्टर अपनी ग्रोथ में आता है। जैसे मैं एक लाइफ साइंसेज ग्रेजुएट हूँ, तो एक लाइफ साइंसेज में भी एक जे करवाता है, आया था, और अभी भी ग्रोइंग स्टेज में आईटी सेक्टर में। जैसे एकदम कोविड के बाद आपने देखा एकदम स्पाइक आया, ठीक है, बहुत अच्छे अच्छे लोगों के प्लेसमेंट हुए। तो इसी क्या इस एनवायरनमेंट वाले डोमेन में, सस्टेनेबिलिटी वाले डोमेन में, क्या बहुत अच्छा ग्रोथ आने के चांसेस हैं फ्यूचर में, और वो कैसी ऐसी स्किल्स हैं
या
जो फ्रेशर्स को, या फिर जो वर्किंग प्रोफेशनल्स हैं, उनको आइडेंटिफाई करनी चाहिए और उन पर काम करना चाहिए, जिससे वो इस सेक्टर में अपने आप को स्टेब्लिश कर सकते हैं?
यस। सो क्लाइमेट के बारे में एक चीज सबको समझने की जो जरूरत है, दैट इज कि क्लाइमेट ना एक एक सेक्टर नहीं है.
ओके।
It is it is going to be part of every single sector that is going to be there. Some or the other component is going to come. So for example, I think a lot of people who are in chemistry domain or people in life sciences domain are going to have a very wonderful time, because people are now researching on new material technologies that can either happen from the chemistry world, that can either happen from the bio world. There's a lot of interesting research that is happening in the materials world. So that is one area which I definitely think over the course of next 4 to 5 years is going to see a lot of boom. I also feel that satellite technology and a lot of like satellite technology is both IoT plus AI plus image processing, etc., right? This space is also going to see a lot of boom, because they're in climate. A lot of things can't be measured by humans or by sensors also. So if you really want to measure those things, you need to figure out what is the natural process which is guiding that and define. So for example, if you really want to see what are the carbon hotbeds across the world. Now you can't go and put just measurements. You can put sensors and stuff like that, but
हम्म।
even in that scenario, something like a satellite can give you much better understanding of what's happening on an overall world level, because you're not talking about that one small region. You want to know it at a global level, right? So I think satellite tech is going to play a very, very, very big role.
ओके।
So if you're somebody who is excited about image processing, you can actually work in satellite world. If you're somebody who is good with data analysis, you can also work there. uh, I think another area that is of very interest to me is, of course, IoT, because sensor tech is going to be like satellite can solve for a lot of problems, but it also needs complementary data. A lot of that
हम्म।
complementary data will come from the IoT space. Most of the things that you want to monitor in like climate space today
हम्म।
is probably going to happen in regions which are probably lesser accessible to humans. So, for example, if you want to do biodiversity monitoring, if you want to see, if you want to monitor certain species of animals, right?
हम्म।
You will not be able to access them all the time. So you will
हम्म।
probably have to have, like, I think this is something that is very prominent in the world already, but people tag animals. They attach certain collars or they attach certain RFID tags to those animals so that they can actually see their patterns, and then they can study why is the species so important, what
ओके।
changes is this species going through, right? So a
हम्म।
lot of sensor tech is not only going to help things in like EV space, but in large variety of spaces, right?
ओके।
Healthcare to like EV to your biodiversity monitoring, etc., etc. And I think there are a lot of things that are also happening in like real estate space where or electricity. I think energy is a very important thing that everybody discusses. So
ओके।
if if you're somebody who understands, like if you're somebody who is from oil and gas industry, right, and you understand energy and its concepts by default, You can
Mm-hmm.
be probably a really good value add in the renewable industry as well, because a lot of those skills are transferable,
Okay.
right? I think one more thing, and I think probably the last thing that I think is going to have a major impact is basically the circular economy thing, which waste management,
Okay.
packaging, right? These are the things where materials are going to be used, but they also need supply chains for these materials. They also need
Okay.
to know what is the life cycle of each material. Are things getting recycled? Can they get upcycled? So I
Mm-hmm.
think fashion industry is going to see a very big boom in terms of sustainable fashion, where
Yeah.
people will try to use more eco-friendly, like threads
Mm-hmm.
to make products. How can
Okay.
we make these and there are going to be supply chains which will probably help you understand how can you give a second life to a product. So I think
Okay.
all those older notions of what India were represented in terms of yaar ye ye shirt thodi kharab ho gayi hai, rafu kara do, right? I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those things we are going to see happening mainstream. There are a lot of interesting companies working in this space. Like if you look at material recycling, I think sorting and segregation is a very big problem. So AMP Robotics is doing great work. If you
Okay.
really want to know what materials, how can we create reverse supply chains of picking up stuff from the customers and then introducing that back into the supply chain of a consumer, like of a company. I
Mm-hmm.
think Pentatonic is doing great work.
Oh.
So there are a lot of these companies which exist already, where you can actually see what is the exciting work. So yeah, I think there
Okay.
are a lot of areas. It's so I think the first step that anybody who is a student right now in college should do is see how climate affects is getting affected in their field of interest.
Okay.
What skills do they already have?
Okay.
Can If you're a marketing person, see, all these companies also need marketing people. So if you're a
Hmm.
marketing person working in any company, like you can actually come and help these companies as well, right?
True.
So it's not that you always have to build those extra skills. And I think that was my learning, as I said with Antler, that I don't have to learn all the new skills. I can leverage
Mm-hmm.
my existing skills, come to the sector and probably help the people, and in turn learn something from this sector which can again help me to achieve what I really wanted to do. So
Okay.
marketing is a great example, engineering is a great example, sales is a great example. So I genuinely feel that a lot of people who have contributed really well in like Bolt.Earth, they're they're not people who understand sustainability. Of course, they do understand this, but they're actually great sales people first. So they
Okay.
understand their customers really well. They understand what should be the pitch, right?
Okay.
So all these skills are required in every company. So if you are part of any company and you think that there is a parallel company which needs these skill sets, you can actually go ahead and help these companies. Thank you.
Okay. Great. So thank you so much for this elaborative answer, मैम. Like जो भी हमारे कॉलेज व्यूअर्स इस सेगमेंट को एक्सप्लोर करने चाहते होंगे, तो उनको ज़रूर एक एक अच्छा आइडिया लगेगा कि हम किस किस डोमेन को हम एक्सप्लोर कर सकते हैं. सो दैट वाज इट फ्रॉम आवर साइड फ्रॉम टीम बीटीआर मैम. सो इट वाज अ लवली एंड सो बहुत ज़्यादा इंसाइटफुल सेशन था ये हमारे लिए. ठीक है. अगर मैं ऑनेस्टली बताऊं तो मैं ईवी सेक्टर को बस वही क्लाइमेट से रिलेटेड देखता था, लेकिन आज जो आपने उसको ब्रेक डाउन करके बताया, मतलब वो मेरे लिए बहुत एक आई ओपनर था. और बहुत सारे नए नए वर्टिकल्स को मेरे को जानने के लिए मिला. तो आई आई बिलीव जो भी हमारे व्यूअर्स ये देख रहे होंगे, इरिस्पेक्टिव वो किसी भी डोमेन के हैं, उनको दे विल डेफिनेटली लर्न अ लॉट फ्रॉम योर जर्नी. सो थैंक यू सो मच मैम फॉर टेकिंग आउट टाइम फ्रॉम योर बिजी स्केड्यूल, एंड आपने अपना बहुत ही अच्छा एक्सपीरियंस शेयर किया हमारे व्यूअर्स के साथ. तो थैंक यू सो मच मैम.
Thank you so much. I think one thing that I really want to say is, I've seen a lot of podcasts. People are
हम्म.
very focused, people are doing X number of things. But I think when I saw your page, it was very
हम्म.
unique, and I really appreciate that you're trying to do something different, because these days there's a very big boom of podcasts, right?
या.
So to see you bring people from very different domains and
या.
give that exposure to students who are in college is a very good deed. So I'm more than happy if you ever need any kind of help. Like, thank you so much for inviting me. And
या.
yes, looking forward to more things from your side.
Yeah, definitely, ma'am. Likewise. So then, ma'am, we will wrap up this session.
Yes.
And thank you so much. Thank you so
Oh,
much, ma'am. Bye bye. Have a nice day.
You too. Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye.